Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm so honored to be here, and thank you, Zoltan, for convincing me to come over. And it's a pleasure to be here from Toronto at Breda University. I am going to talk to you about virtual production strategy in post-secondary education. And by the way, I do want to mention how cool it is to actually see the faces that I've seen for so long on LinkedIn, finally in person. So it's just kind of psychedelic. What do I mean by that? I mean, how do you go from zero virtual production, infrastructure, curriculum, nothing, to a full ministry-approved program with your own LED volume, which is depicted here? And why are you never finished? So first up, it's not a linear process. It is not straightforward. It looks a little like this, and if this looks chaotic, that is because it is. It was. I did not know I had a strategy when I was going through this. It was very much experimentation, twists and turns, circling back, and I'm sure a lot of you have gone through this as well. And I'm going to talk about these various things as we dive in. So just a quick intro of myself. So I teach in virtual production, VP pipeline, intro to VP, special topics, but I have taught for 19 years in the college system. And I've taught screenwriting, capstone supervision. I think I've supervised hundreds of capstones, and screenwriting, feature film, and also, of course, production. And I did a PhD in a topic, developing a learning model for teaching film production online and virtually. And when I did this and finished it in 2017, everyone's like, why on earth would you ever teach online? And why would you make films virtually? And we all know what happened 3 years after that. And so I was very glad I had that training and thought of that ahead of time. As well, yes, I've had the pleasure of developing 2 programs from the ground up at Humber, and one of those was a virtual production graduate certificate, which I'm going to talk about a lot. And last but very much not least, I am a filmmaker. That's my soul. That is who I truly am. And also research means a lot to me. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. So first, I just want to see hands up here. Who has faced issues of funding in their institution, okay? What about convincing administration to buy technology and LED volume, making the case for that? Any people like that? Okay. What about getting things done at a speed that somewhat keeps up with industry? You know, with all the rapid change. Have you had challenges with that? Okay. So I also faced these issues, and this was during the pandemic. I thought, okay, how can we make films for essentially $0, or let's say $100 per film, and still teach all the aspects of filmmaking, incorporate aspects of virtual production? And so I thought, okay, we need to root this entirely in curriculum that already exists with minor tweaking. And so this became a collaboration between film and game programming. And the first thing, and if you are maybe going to try this out, I highly recommend you first reach out to the head of the game programming program, who will know which course this could live in, which part-time professor they could approach. And ideally, it should be a game engine course in 2nd or 3rd years. They should already have had some exposure to all kinds of things. And by the way, these game students had never seen Sequencer, and they were 2 to 3 years in. So that just tells you a little bit about what game programs teach. It's very different from virtual production. Internal is always easier. You're in the same time zone. You could potentially walk across the hall and find your colleague and talk about things that are not working. That's always easier. But let's say you don't have a game programming program in your institution, because some places only have game design. I would not recommend that. I would recommend game programming. So you don't have it at your school. The next best thing is a COIL, a collaborative online international learning initiative where you reach out to your international department, they will reach out to another international department at one of your many partner institutions, because that's what they do all day, and they want collaborations. Now, you might have some challenges with time zones. This is a factor. Also alignment of schedule, things like that, but those are your two options. So just if you don't have that program doesn't mean you shouldn't do this. So as I mentioned, this was very much rooted in the curriculum and aligning learning outcomes. The biggest problem in 2021 was a lot of people were starting to work in virtual production. We had game programmers starting to operate the brain bar and as an engine op, but they actually had never really understood filmmaking. They don't know what a close-up is. What is an OTS? What is a dolly? So this was essential to start to have common terminology. The same thing with the film students, and in my case, the students I had were film and multi-platform storytelling students. They had never made a film in their life, so they were learning everything from scratch. And so we made sure we had meaningful overlap. So one class that we held together was class on storyboarding, because it's kind of like speaks for itself. It's very visual. But we skipped things like story development. That was just with me and the film students. So as all creatives know, limitations are actually gifts to be more creative, to overcome something. They are there for your protection and also asking you to rise to them. So the parameters were 1 minute and free fab assets. We did not allow other assets, except one where they made a character which proved 80 hours extra. No dialogue, just enough said there. One character, which some people broke, but rules are sometimes meant to be broken. And of course, it had to have music and sound, because in my opinion, music and sound is 51% of virtual production. It's more than the visual, it's more impactful because it carries the parts where maybe you have lost faith in the realism. And very importantly, it had to align with a global theme, some kind of meaningful story. Because the game programming program often came up to me and said, Eva, please, our students are only making car chase films or car chase games, and we can't take it anymore. And so I said, oh, well, I have hundreds of stories for you. And so this student, actually my film student, wanted just to make a film about someone chasing another person. And as riveting as that is, I thought maybe it would be worthwhile having that mean something. Why are they running? And so this film was about the forest fires in British Columbia at the time, of which there were many more after this. And he then had a reason to run. So what you would do is you would pool some money. In our case, my associate dean agreed to giving me $1,400 to pay a sound designer. We had a composer volunteer. He scored blindly, like that's how fast our pipeline was. He just kind of had one keyword per production and key moments, and magically it worked. Because original score is key in filmmaking, especially virtual production. So the game programming professor, he taught sequencer to his students. That was like the main part of the lessons. And I taught, ideation, script writing, shot listing, storyboarding, and very importantly, production management, because we were not seeing each other in person at all. We were only on Discord. So imagine using Discord to manage full production, all phases of production, all the way to post. And yeah, so we made 14 films in 14 weeks for $1,400. So that was a real achievement, and meeting all those deadlines. Oh, here, you can hear it.
My students were working with others who had completely different perspectives to them.
It definitely helps our students work better in the industry because The game industry is very collaborative.
And so we were delighted when Epic Games Unreal Engine featured this on their blog and highlighted the fact that this was about stories, meaningful stories that mattered, and not just the technology, not the technical pipeline, but what did we actually do with these films. And we ended up winning a Faculty Innovation of the Year award, which was also nice, and the beginning of telling other people about this. So now I'd like to dive into applied research. Who here is a researcher? Just curious. Okay, very good. So you're all like-minded and understand the power of applied research because, number one, it gives you a chance to actually learn something new because things are happening. Your time is stretched thin as a professor. You're obligated to do a lot of things, and in our case, we can buy ourselves out of teaching time with research funds. So it gives you time to start learning and playing around, experimenting with technology, with pipelines, pathways, things to put in curriculum to really take time and assess, is this the right thing for us? And of course, also acquire tools and see how those will incorporate into your existing framework that you have at your institution. So the first project that I did at Humber was this project where I approached my colleague Elizabeth Fanuta, who is an architect, and we engaged a senior programmer and then these research assistants. I'll just say Elijah in the middle is an interior designer, and the two, Ariel and James, were game programmers. And we built a metaverse. We took a digital twin of part of our campus there, of course embellished because the metaverse allows us to do this. And we had different portals through which you could go and visit other areas. So we had a virtual production volume because we didn't have one in person yet. And in that volume, you could even teleport into the LED wall environment in Unreal, and a screenwriter could experiment and say, you know what, I think I want to set this scene by this tree over here. Or, you know what, this lake is amazing. Why don't we show that in the, and then they can rewrite their story. So not a lot of people address screenwriters in virtual production, but we wanted to do that. And so it's a VR app, and I'm going to show you a quick video.
This is a really great opportunity for architects to really expand their design capabilities.
With the advances happening in the metaverse, we have an opportunity to take virtual production, film education, and take it into a space where you can innovate, you can experiment.
Anyone in the world can experience in a more immersive way and collaborate better.
Yeah, so I skipped the credits there. This led us to the second research project, and this time we partnered with an industry partner called APG Media. They install LED volumes across Canada and North America, and they also at the time were discovering that institutions were, a little shy to spend that kind of money on a new volume, and we, of course, understood this because we were living that reality, and together we exchanged a lot of ideas, a lot of information by going and creating this application. So we made an application that allowed them to educate educators You know, what is a brain bar? What is a tracking system? Where do they sit? People had no idea the configuration of a volume, just the bare basics. Now we take this for granted, but do you remember the first time you heard the term brain bar? It kind of blew my mind. And so this was a way for them to reach out and give educators something for free. And you could walk around this in VR as well. We had one part of this application that allowed them to visualize a space for a client, like a school, in their existing studio and put in the spec wall that they were going to purchase and walk around and check it out. And then once you see it, it's kind of like then you believe it, you know? And so that was a sales tool for them, but it was also educational, which is critical in the business of virtual production, you know, sales, I would say. Anyway, so I'm going to quickly show you, but I'm going to talk over this for a second. So, but you can up the music. So I don't hear sound. Oh, okay. Yeah, so here you can see this is what you can do in VR or on a computer, and you can just click
The brain
anywhere.
bar is the area of the LED volume where UE on-set operators control what goes on the LED wall, using a function called NDisplay in Unreal Engine. This computer or series of computers allows you to make changes that are requested on the floor by technical and creative crew members, such as the director, DOP, or mocap techs, who are also interacting with your setup. A motion tracking system is what enables you to track your camera, other objects or performers that integrate into the VP pipeline to create in-camera visual effects productions. There are a variety of brands and types of tracking systems, including optical, inertial, and more solutions are coming on the market. LED wall.
Okay, you get the point. It goes on. You know this stuff now, but at the time, this was really new and highly relevant for people who were about to make a huge purchase to at least be familiar with the basics. And this led to a lot of awards and attention in our institution. And I'm only telling you this because you need to create visibility around virtual production in order to really expand in an institution. So getting the attention of administrators, the president, so we won the President's Research Excellence Award for both of those projects, which was really nice. And definitely then presented to the entire institution. And we published in this book a chapter on some of that research. As well, we made sure that we highlighted our research assistants through a whole campaign of women in tech. We had lots of women on the team, so we wanted to promote that. And this was also good cross-branding for APG Media, because there needs to be more women in virtual production, so this was a good thing. And you know, our institution has its own research publication, and so we, you know, were featured there. And all of this continued to spread the word, basically telling our administrators, we're not going away, we're not going to stop talking about this. So here's what I call entry virtual production. So perhaps you do not have a large LED volume yet, and but you still want to incorporate it. So number one, most film degrees have a course called Special Topics. That course was invented for, you know, quick iteration in a time when a change in a curriculum can take 1.5 years. That is not feasible for keeping up with the world we live in today. So Special Topics, in my opinion, is licensed to change overnight. And so that's what I did. I took a course called Special Topics in a film degree program and converted it to, you know, virtual production for the semester. And it was just an introduction. By the way, I don't teach Unreal, but I was teaching this course. So I hodgepodged different experts. I had people zooming in from India. I did what I had to do. I also had guests. I'll talk about that. But yeah, and we also had OptiTrack from our 3D animation program. Bless them, they had the insight to fight the fight to get that system. And I think like optical cameras are a bit like sound equipment. They never go out of style. They don't expire, so that's nice. So I think we've had these for 15 years. And skeletal mocap really gives a high impact as well. It's, you know, part of real-time animation and can really tell part of the story of virtual production. And we did build a mini wall. So this is our little mini wall housed in our Barrett Center for Technology and Innovation, which now a lot of programs use. And we use it as a testing space. Sometimes if the other volume is booked, we can still go in the testing volume and just test out some kind of file. So it's definitely useful to have a secondary smaller volume, which was in fact our first owned volume and then became our secondary. Big shout out to Jamie Hercombe, who you all know and love. She has been our earliest and most dedicated supporter of our program. So thank you, Jamie. Let's give her a round of applause, why not? And so from Epic Games, right, we definitely benefited from some of their educational material and also the advice given. So Jamie advised us in the early days of the program, as well as she taught one of the courses in our first round. And yeah, we're an Unreal academic partner because of the amazing faculty we have who are authorized trainers. As well, we partnered with a studio in Toronto called Sunbelt Rentals, where we rented their space and had access to a large volume. Carlos Vilches actually rendered this for us. So yeah, who was also one of our instructors. We also partnered with Dark Slope, and they are not only a studio, they are a production company. They own IP, and we greatly benefit from having their staff as guest speakers. So while you can always get guest speakers, when you have a partnership like that, it's almost like they know they're coming in that semester at least once. Like it's definitely I can count on them, and it's usually more extensive than other guest speakers. So we're very privileged to have them as part of our advisory and a partner. Okay, ministry approval. We have arrived. Actually, all this time, I can't even keep track of where was this when that was happening. But somewhere along the line, we got ministry approval. And this was after about a year and a half of a long and extensive process of working with our program planning and development department at Humber, which, you know, there's a lot of hoops to get a ministry approved program, and I'm going to tell you the benefits in a sec. Well, basically, you offer a curriculum for very little money because the government subsidizes half of it for our domestic students. International pay like the double rate, but the domestic students really get a great deal of value. So that's the benefit of being ministry approved. Secondly, so there's a cap. We can't raise tuition on them because, you know, private training often, you know, is quite expensive. And really importantly, they can stack this education. So this is a credential that is recognized. We have pathways into master's programs. We are working on some other articulations. So this can become part of official credentials that can lead to master's, PhD, and so forth. So it's another benefit of being a ministry-approved program. And you might be wondering, okay, it's only 2 semesters. So it's an intensive 2-semester graduate certificate, which focuses only on the technical side of virtual production and the logistics like producing. We purposely left out the creative stuff, and I'm going to talk about why and who does that, because our productions are highly creative. But the students are not focused on that in their learning outcomes, except for a little bit of VAD. But we also chose not to focus so much on VAD in our program. And these are just some breakdowns of my courses that I teach, because I like graphics. Okay. So this is our volume, and quick little walk around. Once you own your own volume, it just solves a lot of problems because you have power over your own scheduling. We can have access on the weekend, which students really need. Students need greater hours in the volume to truly learn it. So we also have access to our other gear, interdisciplinary collaborations, affecting the film culture in other programs. I'm sure you're loving the weather. In Canada, it gets much worse than this. And so yeah, we've had students in the film program like gaffers, grips, come into our program and perform in those roles. all because they see it and they're like, I want to be part of this. So you ask, how are you running a program without creative? Well, we bring creatives on. So we have a mentor structure. We have mentors who come and play the role of director, writer, DOP, sometimes the client, like Jessica Spurrell, who is our singer-songwriter of a music video. So they come on pretty early. Sometimes I'm in touch with them before the semester starts, and we develop some kind of IP, which they license to us under a Creative Commons license. And usually it's my idea first. I say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Can you do this? And then they build on that. And so they range from different people, often graduates of Humber from many, many years ago who have never touched virtual production. We ensure that these people have never worked with virtual production before because we want a fresh slate. We want to teach them the process. We want to onboard them. And they benefit greatly because they don't have these opportunities. Sure, they have a little workshop from their union, like one-day workshop, but nothing beats 14 weeks working with students day in, day out. And we also tell the students, you don't get access to this person the whole time. Like you have these hours where you get a meeting with them and you have to ask all your questions. So we simulate the real world. You're not going to get to talk to the director of the show all that much. You get your chance, you better have your questions ready. And so this elevates the learning. It is a simulation of the industry. And yeah, let me talk about this. So this was our capstone of our first cohort. That one ran at a different time than we normally do. It was called SAPT, and the director, Adrian Wallace, was a graduate of 2 Humber programs, if not 3. So he is very Humberized, and he was exceptional. He actually brought 2 possible scripts. In his case, we did a narrative piece, and he brought 2 scripts or ideas, and the students helped assess which one would lend itself more to virtual production. Because, you know, the story really matters, so we wanted to maximize the use of the tech, make sure we were going to have shots that would use the wall to its, you know, best potential. And I'm just going to show you a trailer. Get ready. It's good sound.
The job economy continues to struggle due to inflation, citing major impacts on Canadian manufacturing jobs, particularly in Ontario.
So yeah, lots in there, and we're really excited because it's starting to get into the festival route. We actually had to finish a bunch of things on this production, and yeah, I can't wait to see where it goes. The next project I'll tell you about was this fall, so it was the first term in our program, and normally we actually just do an exercise with very simple requirements just to get into virtual production. At this point, they have never touched Unreal. So this year, I decided to take this up a notch just because the opportunity was there. And so we went full throttle and actually had a client, which was a musician who was a Humber graduate with a 1-minute song, Bury Me. And our students created a full music video with these mentors. So Jacqueline was actually based in Los Angeles. She had reached out wanting to work with us. And so I thought, okay, she can work remote, and she did all of the creative concept. She did do some of that with the students so they could see what goes into that. But it's kind of like a cooking show. You know, you already have the ingredients ready and you're just putting them in the pot. Because the real ideation takes time. It's kind of dirty and messy. So it was, this is how you write a script in 3 hours, you know? And she also had a storyboard, creative concept, all of that. And a little bit of back and forth with the artist as well, because we wanted to make sure we were, honoring her vision for the song and everything. As well, we brought on Gregor Hagee, who is a top-notch DOP. He's done like 30 features, if not more. So very experienced, had taught at Humber before, but had never worked with an LED wall, and he was very curious. So he, miraculously, it worked out with scheduling. I've often had sometimes where a mentor, it doesn't work with the schedule, and then, we keep them on file for next semester. And as you can see here, this is the full volume, the poster. So much goes into this. You're going to see some of this in a moment, in a reel, one moment. So this is hot off the press. We just had a screening on Friday before I left. So this semester we did a capstone commercial about 2 soccer players on our collegiate team. And the mentor was Elijah, who was the writer, director, DOP, and editor. So we got a lot out of that mentor, which was really good because we actually had to go to camera in 6 weeks with everything. That's a lot for all these students. So we had skeletal mocap as part of this. And I'm just going to show you a little BTS. And I can't really officially say anything, but there is a big sporting event happening this summer. It starts with F, and happening in Toronto, and we may end up screening there. So that was a very elaborate hint, but we're super excited where this will go. We've had some really good feedback. They look amazing, and you can see from all those roles, this is what goes into it. The students are extremely talented. They really rise to all the challenges we present. One other thing that I do in my course in special topics is we create an educational module. So the students teach someone else about their position. Perhaps it's a student in the next semester. Perhaps it's a student at another school. This year, I've added something where we onboard a person in a traditional film program, like a gaffer or a grip, because all these people come to our set, they have no idea what's up. So we want them to actually go through a module that trains them at least to the point where we get them. Even industry, even some of these mentors. And this is last year's cohort. Okay, so here's an overview of the program with music. And I will tell the students that you applauded, because it is their work and just hours and hours of very difficult times. You know production, you know what's involved, and they just rise to the challenge every time. And we're very proud of them. We're proud of everyone coming together on these. And this reel represents a milestone for us because it shows that it works. We built it, and virtual production education can come together like this. It also answers the question I started with, but also begs a new question, another question, which is, I'm going to answer this with a quote from Marshall McLuhan, who said, "If it works, it's obsolete." And you think, what do you mean, Eva? Like, what do you mean? We just started with this, but the reality is we already have something new upon us, and it's AI, and it is not going away. And so last year I created a LinkedIn newsletter that tries to help us creatives understand how we can get ahead of AI and not be afraid of it. And I talk about things like jobs, autonomy in production, and what seems to be another re-evolution of cinema. And I just wanted to tell you a quick story. So in an hour or two before I was going to the airport, okay, I had an idea. I had an idea. I'm going to have to put this down for a sec. I wanted to give you all a frame of celluloid to connect us. And I frantically went through my house, looking for my stash of celluloid, right? And I came across a stack of boxes in a closet like this. Now, I did generate this with AI because I didn't take a picture in this time, but it looked just like this, a little disorganized more. But it did have these labels. And just the order of these words, the poetry of that was not lost on me. Because if you've worked in this for a number of years, you kind of understand what's in these boxes, what this means in evolution. And so I grabbed the first reel that I could find. Oh, it was this one. And I held it up to the light, and it was the blue with the cloud. And I realized this was from my film, Child of Chernobyl, the positive print. And I realized I could not splice this apart because it's my film and it's precious to me as a filmmaker. So I grabbed the second reel, okay? And of course it's called Project 2, which is like final file dot final file underscore. And I looked at it, and it had a hand doing a hand slate, 1, 2, 3. And that, I think, was my hand. It was some group project in film school 25 years ago. And this, I will be willing to cut. So I just want to say that just like we each give our unique perspective at this gathering, our respective expertise, we are formulating the next picture of cinema. Each of us contribute a frame or 2 frames, and when spliced together, we create a motion picture. The story of the future of our medium. And so I would like to give you all I feel like I was doing photogrammetry, but I was just removing the background on images, but I'm going to cut frames if you would like, and you can store it in your wallet or use the sprocket hole and put it on a necklace so that we will always remember this time together. And thank you so much. I'm on LinkedIn pretty much 24/7. Please connect with me. Thank you.